Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something incredibly difficult, a profound natural disaster that hit central Texas very recently.
That's right.
Our goal here is really to try and understand what happened layer by layer. We want to share the human stories, the incredible ones that always seem to emerge, and also, well, explore some big questions that remain.
Mhm.
And we'll be focusing specifically on the impact on a place that means so much to so many Camp Mystic.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder, isn't it? How
Mm.
fast things can change, how a place you think you know can just be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But it's also about resilience,
Yeah.
about, bravery when faced with something truly unimaginable. We'll get into the scale of it. There's some details that are just, well, they really stick with you.
Okay, so let's start with the setting. Hunt, Texas. Can you paint a picture for us?
Yeah.
The hill country, the Guadalupe River. Usually quite scenic, right?
Oh, absolutely idyllic. It's
Yeah.
known for that peaceful river winding through, classic Texas hill country beauty, a real retreat,
Mm.
especially in summer.
But Sunday, July 6th, 2025, that changed everything.
Instantly.
Yeah.
What started as heavy rain, which,
Yeah.
happens,
Right.
it just escalated incredibly rapidly. Some areas got hit with up to 15 inches
15 inches.
in just hours.
Wow. I mean, for context, that's an enormous amount of water in such a short time for that region.
It is. And the geology there, the limestone, the narrow valleys, it acts like a funnel.
Ah, okay, so it doesn't just spread out.
No, it concentrates the water, accelerates it, turns the Guadalupe, usually pretty gentle, into this absolute torrent
And Camp Mystic was right in its path.
directly. The river didn't just flood its banks, it burst them. The water crashed right through the camp.
This camp, it's been there forever almost, since 1924.
Nearly a century. Generations of girls,
Yeah.
swimming, hiking, Bible study, that whole cherished experience.
And then suddenly,
Suddenly it's a nightmare, submerged, structures overwhelmed, just chaos, almost no time to react.
it's hard to even imagine. And then as the waters pulled back, the awful reality started to emerge, the human cost.
Yes, the numbers are just heartbreaking.
What are we looking at based on the analysis?
Well, the confirmation is 27 campers and counselors lost from Camp Mystic itself,
27.
but it was much wider than that. Across central Texas, the total reached 82 confirmed deaths.
82.
And Kirk County, where Hunt and the camp are located, was hit incredibly hard. 68 bodies recovered there,
68 in one county.
including 28 children.
Oh, that's just devastating. 28 kids.
And beyond the confirmed fatalities, there's the uncertainty for those still missing.
How many are unaccounted for?
Region-wide, it's 41 people still missing, and 10 of those are specifically from Camp Mystic.
And more from the camp.
And by July 7th, the very next day, the official word was that search efforts were shifting from rescue to recovery,
Which means
which means for those families waiting, the hope of finding survivors was realistically gone. It's a terrible turning point.
you can feel the shockwaves reaching places like Dallas, Houston, Austin, where so many of these families are from.
Absolutely. The connections run deep across the state.
But even in that absolute chaos, there were these moments, these glimmers of bravery.
Yes, extraordinary stories started coming out.
Like the elderly couple, an 80-year-old couple rescuing their 92-year-old neighbor.
Incredible, isn't it? In a nearby town, water's rising fast. They somehow got their neighbor, and all three ended up clinging to a roof. All night.
Holding onto a roof.
Their description was just, we just held on and prayed.
Wow. Simple, but says everything. Just pure survival instinct and, well, faith.
And then there's the bravery within the camp itself, the counselors,
Yes.
particularly 19-year-old Chloe Childress. Her story is just tragic.
What happened?
She died trying to protect the younger girls in her charge, shielding them.
Oh, no. 19.
Her family described her as so loyal, so caring. It's that kind of selflessness, putting others first, even in the worst possible moment.
Such incredible courage. And she wasn't the only one, I imagine.
No, likely many untold stories. We also heard about Jeff Wilson, a high school teacher from near Houston. He was camping nearby with his family.
And he was lost, too.
Yes, the grief in his school community, his neighborhood, it just shows how widely this tragedy spread.
And the wider community response, beyond these individual acts.
It was immediate. You saw vigils popping up in churches everywhere, people praying together, trying to make sense of it.
The hashtags, too. Hashtag pray for Texas. Hashtag remember Mystic.
Yeah.
That online outpouring.
Right. But also very tangible support. Volunteers just showing up.
With what? supplies.
Food, water, blankets, anything they could get into the area, which wasn't easy.
I can imagine roads washed out, everything disrupted.
Exactly. Even Representative August Pfluger, whose own daughters were at the camp, but thankfully got out.
Right, they were evacuated.
He spoke about his own grief, but also highlighted the heroism of those counselors. It felt like a collective Texas response rallying together.
So let's talk about the official response, the search and rescue.
Well, the scale of the initial effort was massive. In the first 36 hours, search teams rescued over 850 people.
850? That's huge. How?
Helicopters, boats, swift water rescue teams, drones for aerial views, pulling people from rooftops, from trees, from stranded vehicles.
But the conditions must have been treacherous.
Extremely. They were navigating through just tons of debris, parts of buildings, trees, cars. The water was still high and moving fast.
And dangerous in other ways, too.
Yeah, wildlife displacement was a real issue. Reports of snakes, particularly water moccasins being found in unusual places, made the search even more perilous.
It sounds incredibly difficult, which leads to the questions people are asking now about warnings.
Right. The National Weather Service did issue warnings, that's clear.
But were they enough? Were they specific enough, timely enough for this kind of flash flood? That seems to be the concern.
That's the core of it. Flash floods, especially in that terrain, can happen so incredibly fast. Getting hyperlocal warnings out in time is a huge challenge.
And this has brought up wider discussions, hasn't it? About, say, funding or staffing at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
It has. Some observers, like the former NOAA director Rick Spinrad, have pointed out that potential cuts could, theoretically, impact warning capabilities down the line.
So the idea is that resources matter for getting those timely, specific alerts out.
That's the argument. Processing data quickly, getting targeted warnings out,
Yeah.
it requires resources. Now, whether specific staffing levels played a direct role here in this event.
That's still being looked into.
Exactly. It's under investigation. But it definitely highlights that ongoing debate about preparedness funding versus the increasing risk of extreme weather.
Meanwhile, the immediate aftermath saw a federal response.
A very rapid one. President Trump signed a major disaster declaration for Kerr County on July 7th.
The day after.
Yes, which was critical. It opened the doors for federal aid to start flowing for emergency work, for individuals, for rebuilding.
And he planned to visit.
Scheduled for Friday, July 11th, to meet with families and responders. And globally, Pope Leo XIV offered prayers too. It shows the level of impact this had, the widespread sympathy.
So much support, but clearly the road ahead for these communities is long.
Incredibly long.
Right.
Rebuilding homes, infrastructure, maybe even parts of the camp. That's immense.
And that's just the physical part.
Right. There's the emotional and psychological toll. Healing from that kind of trauma, that loss, especially for the children who survived and the families who lost someone. That takes time, support, resources.
But you also sense that resilience, that determination to rebuild.
Definitely. Amidst all the grief, there's a strong sense of community, of Texans helping Texans. That spirit is very evident.
So looking back on our deep dive today,
Right.
we've traced this from, the sudden terror of that flood through the awful human cost, especially at Camp Mystic, to these really amazing acts of courage, both big and small, and then this huge community response.
It's a narrative of immense tragedy, no question, but also profoundly about strength.
Yeah. Heartbreak and strength side by side.
And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you listening. When we face these huge natural forces that can feel completely overwhelming,
Right.
and we rely on these complex systems like warnings, like emergency response, how do we find that balance between accepting the raw power of nature and our own responsibility? Our responsibility to prepare, to adapt, to build better systems.
It's a big question.
It is.
Yeah.
And how do we value and learn from that incredible human spirit that we see emerge? That resilience, that instinct to help, even in the darkest times. What part of this story, this mix of loss and resilience, really stands out to you? What does it make you think about?